So I've been doing ice baths and cold water exposure for a little over 3 months now. And this last week, I've been doing them every single day, twice a day. It's just something that is now part of my daily routine, and I plan to continue doing them for the foreseeable future. So I definitely have some experience on the topic now, and I kind of want to talk about why I started doing ice baths, my story, how I got into them, some tips for anyone who wants to get started, the benefits that I noticed personally, why I plan on doing them until the day I die, and also if I recommend them or not. First, I want to talk about why I decided to start doing ice baths. Ice baths weren't something that were completely new to me. I remember back when I first started training jiu-jitsu like 10 years ago, a lot of MMA guys were doing it, and athletes and jiu-jitsu guys would take ice baths. I remember seeing videos of people jumping in trash cans full of ice and people jumping in big troughs and barrels full of ice, but it was mostly around recovery, and that was the big reason why people would do it. And while it made sense for recovery, it just didn't seem like something I would be willing to do, because honestly, who wants to jump in a tub full of ice? It just was something that seemed like a bunch of meatheads were doing it, like a lot of bro science. It wasn't enough for me to want to take the plunge, I guess, pun intended. And then I stumbled across the Huberman Lab podcast. And even though he talked about all the science and benefits behind cold water exposure, I wasn't ready to do it. But since I started doing a lot of different things that Andrew Huberman was recommending, I decided to do a challenge video. And part of that challenge video was me taking legit ice baths. I went through a lot of trouble planning that video, and because I decided to make that commitment and to do that 7-day challenge, I think in a weird roundabout way, I did that so that I could do the ice baths and not be able to get out of it. I did start off by taking a few cold showers, but the cold showers kind of sucked. Honestly, after you do end up taking an ice bath, you realize how the cold showers just aren't the same. And while they do help and have a lot of similar benefits to the ice baths, they're just not very comparable, because a cold shower can never get as cold as your ice bath can unless you live in a very cold environment. But it's the best alternative if you don't have the ability to take an ice bath. Doing those first few ice baths in my bathtub was super intense.
I feel like David Goggins like, you don't know me! You don't know me!
I can't even begin to describe how much the mental buildup was for it and how difficult it was to do those first few cold plunges. But since that meant I had to refill the tub every day, there wasn't any way to cover it and try to keep it a little bit cold overnight, I decided to then use a trash can that I had as my cold plunge for the rest of that video, which was an idea that came to me because I remember all those meatheads from back when I started jiu-jitsu using a trash can for their ice baths. And I was like, well, perfect. I got this trash can sitting here in my yard. I'm not doing anything with it. It's only had yard waste in it, which is just some grass clippings and stuff. So I'm like, nothing nasty has really been in there. I rinsed it out and I put it in my garage and filled it up with water and started dumping ice in it. And that was what I used for the rest of that video. After that video, oddly enough, I found myself wanting to do the ice baths again and continue them. I never in a million years thought that I would want to keep doing them, but I really felt that good after getting out of them. It's hard to explain if you've never done them. It sounds like bullshit, right? It doesn't sound like it's real. It sounds like somebody trying to sell you on like some magic pill. And I will tell you this, if they sold that feeling that you get after getting out of an ice bath in a pill form, it would be one of the best drugs in the world. If you've ever looked into the research behind it and you've listened to Huberman talk about all the benefits and what it does to your body, it gives you adrenaline without the stress hormone. It gives you dopamine. It gives you energy. It makes you feel good. It helps with swelling and inflammation. It helps activate brown fat and helps you burn fat. That's what it does, and you literally feel it immediately. It's actually pretty miserable when you do it, but the benefits and how you feel afterwards are totally worth it, and you feel great. I've never once in the last 3 months of doing the ice baths have been like, ooh, I can't wait to get in the ice bath. But I have felt like I can't wait till I get out of the ice bath and feel as good as I do when I get out of it. That's the thing I can't wait for. The buildup is usually still the same, although it's not as bad as it was when I first started them. But now that I got my cold plunge set up and it's proper and it's at the right temperature that I want it every time, it's 45 degrees, I can tell you that like getting into it still sucks and it's still cold and it's still miserable for however long I'm in there. But the minute I am out, it is so good. And it's not just because, oh, I'm out, I'm glad to be out of the cold water, I feel great now. That's not it. Maybe you don't feel the inflammation and recovery stuff immediately, but you do feel the dopamine, you do feel the adrenaline, you do feel the energy. I've been doing them first thing in the morning when I get up, and it's like if a 5-hour energy and an espresso shot had a baby. That's what it's like. That's how much energy I feel immediately, and there's no crash from it. Like, it's just natural energy boost, and it's so good. I'm getting caught up talking about how awesome they are, but have no doubt they suck also. Like, they suck being in there. I'm not gonna lie about that part. Being in cold water is not fun, but it feels great afterwards. A couple things that I noticed when I first started too was that reducing friction is very important. Making sure that you have a place that you can do them in the same spot every time, making sure you don't have to refill a tub every time. Those little things are really important. Ice is really expensive. For the 1 week that I did it was almost $100 worth of ice. On the last day, I did 10 bags of ice in the trash can. I got it down into the 30s. It was miserably cold, and I don't suggest that you go that cold to start. And honestly, I've gone that cold and I don't really see the difference between 35 and 45 in how I feel afterwards. It just hurts more when it's colder. So I found like my sweet spot. So if you don't have at least a proper setup, it can be a big pain, especially if you're trying to do it daily. And that's another thing. I ended up using a chest freezer that I had, and I bought these little mini bottles of water, and I would freeze them overnight and then use them to cool down the water in my little tub that I bought. I got rid of the trash can because that wasn't as practical as I wanted it to be. It was pretty big and it was in the middle of my garage, and it smelled like grass and trees and dirt. So I didn't really want to keep using that. So I ended up buying this cold pod thing that was small, and I fit in it perfectly, and that became my ice bath for the last few months. But I was freezing these water bottles overnight and then throwing them in there. But since I started doing them daily, it was hard for me to get those to freeze fast enough. It's a difficult thing to do if you don't have a proper setup, but cold plunges are super expensive. Legit setups are like $3,000-$4,000 or more. So it's one of those things where I wouldn't recommend going out and buying a plunge right away or even building your own until you do enough ice baths so that you know that it's something that you're going to continue to do. So I want to get more into like the things that I personally noticed. I know that I mentioned it a little bit. I talked about all the things that Andrew Huberman has mentioned in his podcast about cold water exposure. I also watched the episode with Dr. Susanna Somberg on there, which is the leading expert in the field of cold water exposure, and she did a lot of research behind this stuff. And I don't want to regurgitate their stuff. I mentioned some of the things that it does, like activates brown fat, it gives you adrenaline without the stress hormone cortisol, it gives you dopamine increase, it gives you energy, it helps with recovery and inflammation and all those things, right? That's the research and the science behind it. But I want to talk about like the things I noticed personally. It has greatly improved my mental health. I can tell you that my mood and how I feel when I get out of those things, my mood is elevated. I'm enlightened. It sounds like bullshit. I know, it does. It really does. But I feel so good when I'm done with them. And like I said, if they sold this as a pill, it would be the best-selling drug on the planet. It'd be at every health food store. It would be number one on Amazon. Like, it's so good. Also, I've been working out a lot, so I don't know how much of the ice baths have played into activating my brown fats and helping me burn fat, because some of the research that has been quoted around the ice baths is people losing body fat from doing them. I am in the best shape of my life right now. I'm going to be 39 this year, and I don't know how much ice baths have helped with that. So I don't want to say that it has done wonders for that, but I will say that I've done jiu-jitsu for like 10 years. I've flown off of motorcycles. I have hurt myself snowboarding. I've had knee surgery. I've got degeneration in a few discs in my neck. I've got back pain, shoulder pain. I'm banged up. But my body has never felt as good as it's felt in the last few months. I think it has to do with the ice baths. I went to jiu-jitsu twice in a row this week, the last 2 days, and had some really tough sparring sessions and got out of there feeling wonderful. And I really do think that it's the ice bath helping. I've mentioned the energy boost that I get from them. I really noticed that recently this week. In the morning, I wake up, I am groggy, sleepy-eyed, don't want to do anything. Right when I get up, I get in there, and the minute I'm out, it's like having the world's biggest cup of coffee without the jitters, without the crash, and just feeling great, wide awake. I mean, it's super cold water. It wakes you up fast and it gives you energy that lasts like a really long time. I feel ready to go when I get out of those ice baths, mentally and physically, just good to go. Like I can run a marathon. Probably not, because my cardio won't let me, but I feel like I can. The last thing that I want to mention that I have personally been using them for this last month or so is dealing with my addictions. I remember listening to it on the Huberman Lab podcast in one of the cold water exposure episodes. He mentioned how there have been some people who used cold water exposure to break their addictions.
One of her patients helped themselves get and stay sober off drugs by using deliberate cold exposure to increase dopamine.
I'm giving up weed, booze, and coffee. I want to be clean. I want to get rid of substances, and I'm not happy with my coffee consumption because I really upped it when I gave up my weed and alcohol. I know a lot of people love coffee, but it was just something that I wanted to cut out personally. I do think that coffee is a big addiction that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's not like an addiction like my weed and my alcohol consumption. Those were real addictions that I'm dealing with and I'm struggling with and I'm working on. And I really think that the ice baths have been helping me a lot. The last thing I want to talk about is like, do I recommend them? And am I going to continue to keep doing them? I'm not a doctor. Don't just listen to some dude on YouTube. Do your own research on anything that you are curious about. I 100% recommend them. I try to get my wife in there. She actually did get in, which is crazy because I never thought I would see the day that she would get in there. Her friend came over and got in there. Like, I really think that they're magical. They are wonderful, and I recommend them to anyone. Again, consult your doctor first. Don't do anything stupid. You don't need to jump in at 35 degrees. Ease your way in. Start at 55, 60, work your way down, find your sweet spot, whatever. But I do recommend at least trying them if you are in relatively healthy, good shape, don't have any heart problems or anything like that. Give it a go. They're so good. I legit did these almost every day, and I plan on doing them for as long as I can, forever. I mean, unless I'm in a place where I can't have my cold plunge, I plan to do these as long as I can and as long as I still feel the benefits from it. And so far, after 3 months or so, I still am feeling the benefits and I still feel that euphoric, amazing feeling every time I get out of them. So as long as that's still there, I'm going to keep doing them. And honestly, as long as I feel good and a lot of the pain that I used to have isn't bugging me as much as it was for the recovery aspect of it, I'm going to keep doing it as well. I'm doing these things forever. Try it first. Don't just go spending a bunch of money because it sucks, it's hard, and it's like a thing you really have to commit to doing for a while to make sure that you're gonna continue doing it. I know me personally, I have a bad habit of thinking I really am gonna do something and then I go and I spend a bunch of money and then I don't do it anymore. And this was something that I wanted to make sure that I was gonna keep doing before I did spend all that money, because I've learned from my mistakes in the past. And that's just the advice that I'm gonna give you. If you're curious about this stuff, even just start with cold showers if you can, whatever. I will say, if you do this, you're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna feel great. You're gonna feel good, and I highly recommend it. And maybe I'll do an update when I'm at 6 months or a year of doing ice baths every day, because like I said, I'm not stopping anytime soon. I love this stuff. All right, with that said, I hope this video was helpful for anyone who's interested in getting into ice baths and cold water exposure. And if it was, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment, and let me know if you've been doing any cold water exposure recently. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.